So you hear this story all the time where folks are talking about their hunting properties and they say they had great bucks all summer long, and then the fall rolled around and poof, they're gone. Well, there's a lot of reasons why that may be. Today I want to talk about 5 reasons that I think you may not be holding bucks on your property this fall. Alright, reason number 1 is that your woods looks a lot like this. Now this is a particular piece of woods that I've hunted my whole life. Now I remember when I was in high school, so we're talking 20-25 years ago, this woods held a lot of deer. I could count on very high deer numbers in this particular woodlot during my bow hunts. And what would happen is the deer would work out of this woods and they'd head out to that egg field right there. But the reason that this woodlot was really good was because it wasn't too long before I started bow hunting that this was pasture and the cattle had been removed from here. And what ended up happening is we had young, early successional growth in this wood, so all the cover was right down at the deer's level. We also had these big old oak trees raining down acorns into this young, early successional woody growth. So what ended up happening is that because the cover was down at the deer's level, they could sit in here, they had the acorns to browse on all day, and then eventually they'd work their way out to the food sources in the evening. And this woods held a ton of deer, but now we can see right through this thing. I mean, it's a ton of pole timber in here, so it might look like cover if you're looking at it from an aerial standpoint, but look at this understory. It is absolutely void of any type of food and any type of cover, so there's no reason for a deer to be hanging out in this area. So what we need to do in this area, if we wanted to start holding deer, is we need to get the chainsaw out and start to cut some of these trees, as well as release the oak trees that are now having these basswoods and other tree species starting to compete with it. So if we can release our oak trees, we're going to get more acorns. If we can start to cut down some of this understory, we're going to get sunlight in here, we're going to get regeneration. We can hinge some of these trees. These are very hingeable trees where we hinge cut them, where we cut about 2/3 of the way through them, tip them over, they stay alive. So we have a living thicket here with that hinge tree. But the bottom line is we need cover back in this area if we want to hold deer, in particular bucks, because bucks love this kind of thing in the summer where it's wide open and airy. It's windy today, so I can feel that wind blowing through here, so this would be a great spot to hang out in the summer to get out of the bugs because of the good airflow. But in the fall, that is not what they want. They want the opposite. They want thick cover, they want high stem count right in their face, and this is not it. So if your woods looks like this, where it's wide open spaces, you need to bust out the chainsaw and get to work. All right, reason number 2 that you may not have bucks on your hunting property this fall is that you are overpressuring your food sources early and often. This is one that I think a lot of guys mess up. You know, they plant this beautiful food plot. Here I got a really nice little perennial kill plot that I put in this here. So you plant this beautiful food plot, and because you planted it, you feel the need to hunt it, and you feel the need to hunt it a lot. But what ends up happening is that you start to educate the deer the more you hunt it. So you're sitting here hunting over your food source. Maybe you had a night where you got a lot of deer out there and you're struggling to get out of stand. Eventually you just bail, you bump deer off of it. Well, when you bump deer off of it, it creates kind of a domino effect in the woods. You don't know if that buck was sitting 30-40 yards back in the woods. Well, the doe goes blasting off your food plot and she spooks that buck that's just sitting back in the cover, and now he's educated and he's gonna bed further away from your food source, and the likelihood of him making it to your food source in daylight is that much less because you keep pounding your food source with hunting pressure. I think that hunting food plots in high pressure states is it's a tough way to kill a mature buck anyway. Now there are certainly scenarios where you can do it. This would be a plot I think you could kill a buck on in a high pressure state. It's a small kill plot, basically between two big chunks of cover, right over there and right over there. But in general, it's very hard to kill a buck in this scenario. I'd much rather sit in a transition area on the way to a food source, getting closer to bedding, but allowing the deer to filter past you in that transition area, get out into the food plot in daylight, and give you a chance to be able to slip out without bumping deer. Now you can build up really nice access strategies into food plots so that you don't bump deer, but oftentimes guys aren't laying out those plans in kind of bulletproof manners, and they end up educating deer because they're over hunting their food sources. They're not thinking about how they exit their food plots, and the deer are figuring them out. And we also got to think about the fact that just going and hunting a stand, we're laying down ground set and those types of things. So the more we sit on a food plot, the more we leave that human sign there, the more the deer become aware of the fact that we're hunting there. And yeah, that's kind of how we create a nocturnal hunting situation on our food plots. So overhunting your food plots, major mistake that a lot of guys make. Show that quick. Looks like the old vine is getting hit, and just like all these fence posts I put up, the fence posts themselves are getting hit. So fun thing to add into the food plots. Mistake number 3 is doing nothing with the fallow spaces on your hunting property. Now, this area that I'm looking at right here was 20 acres of cool season grass for much of my hunting journey. But about 8 years ago, we decided to change that, and we started to add some switchgrass out in this area. We added some trees. As you can see, we got some early successional woody growth that's popping out here, and we decided to actually make this viable deer habitat. I'm on hunting properties all the time where they have these open fallow spaces that are 1 acre, 2 acres, 5 acres, 10 acres that are nothing but cool season grass, and they're doing absolutely nothing for the deer. Because what happens with the cool season grass is that it breaks down once the frost hits it, goes flat, it's not cover, it is not food for the deer, and it's basically just wasted space. And one thing that most properties are lacking is good cover for wildlife, good cover for deer. So we want to take areas like this and we want to build them up into good viable habitat. That's where we utilize our switchgrass. It's where we utilize our tree plantings. It's where we kill the cool season grass and we release that early successional woody growth and that early successional herbaceous growth to provide good cover and good habitat for deer. You know, switchgrass, like I planted out in this space, it's not going to stand up all season long, and well, especially here in Minnesota. The snow will lay it down flat eventually, but you can see it is still standing here in mid-October, whereas the cool season grass is laying flat. So the switchgrass gives me that good cover, and the deer are using it. I go and scout the switchgrass after the season, and I've been able to find a lot of deer beds out there. I flew my drone late summer this year, and were a lot of deer out in the switchgrass. So they're definitely utilizing it, and it's giving me that instant habitat, that instant cover that the deer are responding to. So do not waste your fallow spaces. Mistake number 4 is not using proper screening on your property. Screening is absolutely crucial when it comes to creating a feeling of security on your hunting property. You can see this big old swath of switchgrass right here. This is screening an access route that direction. It's screening off potential bedding that direction. So it is creating a feeling of security through this area because this is thick, rank switchgrass, so they're not going to bed in it when it's thick and rank like that. So it's acting as a nice screen for the bedding back that direction and for our access slipping in up this direction. I use screening cover for access. I use screening cover around food plots to force deer to come out of the cover, particularly bucks to come out of the cover to check if there are does out on the plots. I use screening cover for bedding areas. I like to screen between bedding, around bedding, all of it. So I am screening basically everything. Switchgrass is one of the main things I use for screening. I also utilize edge feathering for screening. You can see the spruce trees right there. I love those as a long-term screen option. Annual screens work very well. The only issue with those is you got to plant them every year, so I tend to lean heavier on perennial screens. But you need to have good screening throughout your property if you want to create that feeling of security that a buck desires. And you can see this is RC Big Rock. I mean, this stuff is standing up about 7-ish feet tall. This is a year 2 stand. Looks beautiful, but it's giving me a nice, thick, strong screen and a nice feeling of security for any particular or any deer that are bedded back there. So I am always looking to add screening throughout the property. That is one thing. If there's one habitat project I end up working on at some point, at some place or some spot on the property, every single year it's screening. I'm always adding more and more screening because I want the deer to feel as secure as possible on our hunting property. So many properties are not properly screened. What ends up happening is folks bump deer, then they educate deer, and then again we start to get nocturnal movement and just less opportunities from the deer stand. And the last one I want to talk about is just access in general. I mean, just a lot of times folks aren't putting enough thought into their access. They're not thinking about where their scent is blowing while they're accessing. They're not thinking about, you know, what their exit strategy is going to be from like a food source. They're not thinking about where that deer could be bedded that day, how close they're walking to bedding. I mean, access is one that just a lot of guys mess up on, and they can ruin their hunt before it even starts. So put a lot of thought into your access strategy, even in the layout of your property. One mistake a lot of folks will make is they center punch their food plot, and then they basically have to walk through the cover to get to their food plot. I mean, that just creates a very unhuntable situation, or a great situation to create a nocturnal buck. So think long and hard about what your access looks like, you know, what the safest route to get in is, what the safest route to get out is. I mean, I don't know that access is ever perfect. If you got a larger property, sometimes you may have to give something up, or there's things where you can do to make an area less desirable to deer to create an access route. Like, I mean, if you got a pasture or things like that nearby, that would be a great thing to access through because that's not good deer habitat. Or you could create a tornado zone in the timber, something that's such a jungled mess that the deer don't want to be in it. That can be a access strategy. Lots of different things you can do to clean up your access, but just start thinking about what your access looks like. And if you are walking in areas where you're disturbing deer, or you're having to walk out and blow deer off your property, or your scent's blowing right into the area of the deer where the deer are likely at, it might be time to, or it is probably time to clean up that access, and or clean up where you have your food plots located or where your bedding's at, all that type of stuff, because we can manipulate that as deer hunters and habitat managers. So start thinking a little bit more about your access routes so that your hunt will be better this fall. All right, that's all I got for you. Hopefully the wind wasn't too bad in the video. It's cold and windy today, so I decided it'd be a good day to quick shoot a video. I don't think the deer could even hear my side-by-side driving around too much today. It's really howling out there. So, all right, y'all take care. God bless.